Hi, I'm John from Fort Wayne Tactical. Thank you for purchasing your 4.5-pound Ruger LCP Trigger Kit. In this installation video, we will show you how to install this kit on your Ruger LCP. Before you begin any modification on your gun, what you want to ensure is that the gun is unloaded. So drop the magazine and make sure you don't have a round in the chamber. In addition to the Fort Wayne Tactical 4.5-pound Ruger LCP Trigger Kit and your firearm, you will need a soft-faced hammer or a plastic-faced hammer, a brass-faced hammer, a hooked pick, or if you don't have a hooked pick, a needle nose pliers, a 5/64 punch, a 1/8 punch, a flat blade screwdriver, and a block with a 3/8 hole drilled in it. We use a polymer block in this video. You can use a wooden block. Having a 3/8 hole in the end does help with punching out pins. Also, we recommend lubricating components when you install them in your firearm. To field strip the pistol, take a flat blade screwdriver and leverage up on the takedown pin and remove that pin. Then push the slide forward. Next thing you'll do to field strip would be to pull out the recoil spring and the guide rod. So just pull upwards and that pulls right out. Then pull out your barrel. What you'll notice at the very back side is a hole at the back of the grip. So we'll take a punch and leverage that out. Okay, so you can see that starting to work its way out. At this point you can just pull that straight out and set the grip cap aside. This step, what we're going to do is actually remove the metal internal frame from the polymer grip. So in order to do that, we need to punch out these two frame pins. So that's here and here. What I have here that we're using is a polymer block with a hole drilled in it. You can actually just use a wooden block. So what we're going to do is actually position the pin right over that hole, and then with an 1/8 inch punch that out. Okay, and remove that, and turn this around, punch out the second pin just the same way. Okay, so now what you'll notice here is that the the hammer spring is actually hooked onto a pin at the base of the grip. So what we'll need to do is either use a hooked pick like this or needle nose pliers and actually unhook that from that pin. So actually lift it out and be careful not to lose that pin. It's easy to lose that, and then you'll just remove that pin, set it aside. So at this point we are ready to lift out the internal metal frame from the polymer grip. Just push up slightly on the trigger and slide this out. Let's see here. Let's hang up just a little bit. Let's slide that straight out. Okay. Okay, so in the Ruger LCP 4.5-pound trigger kit, what you get is are three springs. There's the hammer spring, a trigger reset spring, then a firing pin return spring. At this point, we're going to set aside the firing pin return spring. We'll need that at a later step. This step here, we're actually going to install the Fort Wayne Tactical hammer spring and trigger reset spring. So let's go ahead and set aside some of these items. And on the internal metal frame, the stock hammer reset spring is actually hooked underneath this edge, so just kind of pull it out and then pull off the trigger bar, set that aside. And then what you'll see here, you'll need to remove the hammer. There's the hammer pivot pin, and just push that through. It should fall right out. See how easily that came out? Then pull out the hammer, set that aside. Okay, at this point here, we can actually replace the hammer spring, which is attached to the hammer. We're going to do this by just forcing this upwards, just like so. So that just unhooks. Then you'll take the Fort Wayne Tactical hammer spring that was provided in your kit, hook that in. There's actually 2 grooves there, and it is the smaller of the 2 grooves. Okay, so that's hooked in. We're just going to set this aside. Now we're going to take the this internal metal frame and actually remove a pin that's on the underside of the trigger. So here we're just going to push that out. Okay, so that actually exits from the top side here. At this point you can actually lift out the stock spring, set this aside, take the Fort Wayne Tactical trigger reset spring and insert that into that slot. What you want to do is actually keep this hoop parallel to this surface. Okay, so that should be oriented about like so. Hold the trigger forwards and this trigger swivel block rearwards. What you'll see from this view here is you can actually see through that hole. At this point we're going to actually take the pin that we just removed and insert that back into that hole, just like so. Okay, that should get most of the way down. Just make sure that that's flush. Okay, so that spring has been installed. We're going to reinstall the hammer and the hammer spring back into the internal metal frame. So just slip this in. What you need to do is actually line up this hole with that hole. So slide that in, line up those 2 holes, and slide in the hammer pivot pin. Okay, so what you'll notice with the hammer pivot pin is that should be flush on this side, and it'll actually protrude on this other side right here. Okay, at this point you'll take your trigger transfer bar. You'll notice there's a hole at one end. Hook that onto the trigger pivot block and place that in like so. And then the very last step is to take this trigger reset spring, rotate it counterclockwise, and hook that underneath here. What you'll notice is there's actually a groove right on the underside of the trigger transfer bar. So we're just going to take that and wind that underneath that edge. There we go. Okay, so there you go. It'd be actually to insert the internal metal frame back into the polymer grip. So what you'll actually do is carefully hold that transfer bar and all these parts together. Insert this in with the hammer spring down into the mag well and just slide it in like so. And when you do this, what you'll notice is that the front of the frame will actually seat all the way down, but the rear side will not. You'll actually have a gap right there. So I'm going to pull this back out to show you what's going on, and then we'll reinsert that. Okay, so what we have in here, there's actually a little lever right here, and this lever actually needs to be pushed forwards. Naturally the spring pressure pushes it to the rear, and this is actually what's preventing the back of the metal inner frame from seating all the way. So what we'll do, we'll actually insert the frame inside, and then we're going to slide in a flat blade screwdriver underneath this and push this forward and then fully seat the internal metal frame. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to insert this back in, and then on this rear side I'm going to insert the flat blade screwdriver, push that forwards and downwards. And so now this is fully seated. I want to hold these together like that, and we'll take the two plastic frame pins. Now what you'll notice on these frame pins is one end is smaller than the other. You want to insert the small end first. So insert that, insert the second one, and then tap those flush. Actually reinstall the hammer spring pin and the polymer grip cap. So what you will notice on the underside of your grip is there's actually a shelf right here and here. This pin is actually actual rest right on that shelf, so just position that in the grip. And then with a hooked pick or a needle nose pliers, grab the hammer spring and pull that. So what you'll notice on the hammer spring pin is there's actually two grooves here and here. You want this on the left side. So as the shooter, you want this on the left side right here. Now we'll take just the polymer grip and insert that back over until it snaps. To install the Fort Wayne Tactical hammer pin firing pin return spring. So the firing pin return spring actually provides spring tension to the firing pin. So what we'll do is actually punch out this roll pin that's in the top of the slide. Okay, so we'll take that roll pin and set it aside. Okay, so what we'll do is with a screwdriver just relieve the tension, depress that firing pin, and then remove your remove this small pin. Okay, so just a word of warning, that is under spring pressure, so you might actually lose your firing pin. So now pull this out and pull out the stock firing pin return spring. Alright, now what we're going to do is turn this over, set this aside, set that aside. We're actually going to apply just a little bit of gun oil to the pin. And then with a needle nose pliers, hold that pin and just get started in the top of this slide here. Okay. Alright, so what we're going to do is actually drop in the Fort Wayne Tactical firing pin return spring and the firing pin. Now one thing to notice about this firing pin, there's actually a flat that's right here. This needs to be oriented in the same direction as the roll pin. The roll pin actually comes through and helps retain that once that's fully assembled. So just make sure that that's oriented in that direction. So insert that in and just get that rolled around correctly. Now in order to fully install this, what you're going to need to do is depress that firing pin. What we've actually found is that using a machine screw with a pan head actually works out really well to fully depress that. So if you just insert that machine screw, that depresses the firing pin. So now we're going to come around like this and okay, and then we're going to finish that off with a 1/8 inch punch. Alright, now we can remove the spring, the machine screw, and you want to verify that the firing pin actuates smoothly. If that roll pin, if that flat is not oriented correctly, it'll actually bind up against the firing pin. So if that's actuating smoothly, then you're good. this point, we are ready to reassemble the firearm. Take the slide and insert the barrel. Now take the guide rod and insert it into the slide. Then on the back side of the guide rod should catch a notch that's on the back side of the barrel. Now insert the slide on the rails of the polymer frame. Okay, now take the takedown pin and insert this into the takedown pin hole. The installation of the Fort Wayne Tactical 4.5 pound Ruger LCP Trigger Kit is now complete.